So today I would like to talk a bit about so-called feedback loops or warming loops. Because if you want to understand how the climate will change in the next decades, it's really good to understand how feedback loops work. It's basically an understanding of cause and effect, of interdependence, how we Buddhists would say, and what we actually study and contemplate and meditate upon, but mostly not in regard to climate change. So personally, I made a commitment to myself some time ago to understand more the science behind what the scientists are telling us regarding climate change. And I would like to understand more and also integrate it into my daily life, how the Earth's elements and the human impacts work together, how they influence each other. And from the Buddhist perspective, we know that all actions will bear results. So we are concerned about our karmic impact for future rebirth. If we are concerned about others' well-being or mother sentient beings' well-being as well, then we should be concerned about our own actions, our own impact. So, and if we have taken bodhisattva vows, then even more our interest should be focused on others' well-being and on our own personal development to develop Buddhahood, to attain Buddhahood, so we can really help other sentient beings. As Tokme Sammo, a Tibetan monk and bodhisattva from the 13th century, already said in the 37 practices of the bodhisattvas, first 10, when your mothers who loved you since time without beginning are suffering, what use is your own happiness? Therefore, to free limitless living beings, develop the altruistic intention. This is a practice of a bodhisattva. And I was thinking this morning, my goodness, there's so much suffering in this world, including in myself. And where to start? One could think, oh, there's a big pandemic going on. Why talking about climate? And I had the struggle within myself as well, learning what is going on in India, for example, and feeling really compassionate or really touched by that, and I would like to do something. But I also know that the climate at each and every moment is affecting us and our future life and lives. So as a bodhisattva in training, or somebody who is aspiring to become a Buddha, I focus on wanting to help others. So I'm not trying to give up in the mess of all what's going on. So I focus on something that I can learn and then do my own personal steps and maybe inspire others to follow along. So becoming a Buddha will not be done by prayers alone, as you all know, and His Holiness is saying it constantly again and again. Also not in regard to climate change. We will not reverse the climate change by just praying for it. We have to study, contemplate, meditate, practice the 6 parameters, such as the practice of giving, generosity of giving, protection. And that is one important parameter in that regard to climate change. Giving protection so that sentient beings can live in safety and can, as Buddhist practitioner, can practice on this planet Earth, where the Buddha appeared 2,600 years ago, attained awakening. So we have the same potential to attain awakening on that planet. The Buddha walked the path before us. And so our hope is that this planet can sustain so that we can practice the Dharma on this planet. So therefore, let's learn a little bit more about feedback loops so that we can understand what our impact is and what we can do. So for some of us, these feedback loops may be new, but actually it's not so new. 50 years ago already, some scientists have expressed concern about these feedback loops. But now, only because, I guess, Greta Thunberg, this young woman from Sweden, mentioned it several times in her talks, for example, for the United Nations. And then people were wondering, what is she talking about? What are irreversible feedback loops? And so some organizations like Climate Reality Project took that on and put information on it on their website, for example, or Mind and Life conferences. They work together with another organization to create videos that I highly recommend, and we put that here on the bottom of this whiteboard, feedbackloopsclimate.com. These are 4 to 5 videos, about 15 minutes long, and I really recommend watching it slowly and thinking upon it. So with Greta Thunberg, this understanding of how climate change works, how our climate works, we now have access to it. So one definition of feedback loops can be read like that. It's the equivalent of a vicious or virtuous circle, something that accelerates or decelerates a warming trend. A positive feedback accelerates a temperature rise, whereas a negative feedback decelerates it. So there, so far, what scientists have put out, there are various feedback loops, but there are 4 main ones that you will find in these videos that they have published. The first one is melting of sea ice in the Arctic Ocean, then increase of fires in the world's forests, decay of organic matter, of permafrost thaw, and disruption of the jet stream of our global weather. So the base of all of this is the burning of fossil fuel to produce such as electricity, heat. And this emits carbon dioxide and methane, for example, so-called greenhouse gases. And these gases are trapped with the sun's energy in the Earth's atmosphere, and that builds up heat. And as more gases are in the atmosphere, as more the planet will heat up. So normally, I put it there on the top, you see this circle. Normally, 25% of these gases will be absorbed by forest and grassland or greenland, and another 25% by our oceans, and 50% approximately stays in the atmosphere. And so methane and carbon dioxide have different time frames, how long they take to dissolve or change. Methane, for example, stays relatively short in the atmosphere, but carbon dioxide up to 10,000 years. So more and more of these gases get trapped in this atmosphere and influence our weather. And the climate system gets interrupted. We face more and more stronger droughts and storms, heat waves, and so on. We all have observed that and experienced it even here close at our in our environment. Our forests are getting more warm, and we had forest fires in Washington and Idaho, surrounding states, Canada, and such. So we also see from the news that the glaciers are melting rapidly, and it's like a domino effect. So that means one domino falls, and then the next dominoes fall as well. And this is called feedback loop. And one feedback loop we can look into it a little further is the fires in our forests. So since the Abbey is surrounded by forests, I thought to just briefly mention that feedback loop. So the world's forests are responsible for removing 1/4 of all human carbon emissions from the atmosphere and is essential for cooling our planet. But due to the effects of climate change, the trees die. And the result of these deaths is that deaths from fire or droughts or insects, and also deaths basically through mass cutting of trees. And forests themselves are turning into carbon emitters as well as, instead of taking the carbon. So we have so far heated the planet for about 1 degree Celsius and a little more. And that led to an increase of fires, and the forests are heating up. The oceans are heating up. So the trees are dying and become part of this dangerous feedback loop. And that's been stimulated through the warming. So as you can see, on the left side, the temperature rises, the climate becomes hotter and drier. And then trees suffer due to the droughts and fires and insects. We have observed that in our forests as well, more and more. And trees are dying. And then fewer trees can have less opportunities to trap the gas. So, or to hold the gas, to transform the gas. So more gas is trapped in our atmosphere. And that in itself raises the temperature, and that leads to further deaths of trees. So that sounds like a dead end. Is it? It's not a dead end yet. They don't know when the turning point will be. They just don't know. But many scientists are still optimistic if we act and not just talking like me here talking, but act in whatever ability we have to do our part and to feel responsible. And like at Sravasti Abbey, so we grow the trees here, and we want healthy trees to become strong and old, and we remove trees that are sick, and we thin the forest so that the forest fires can't come through so easily. So that's one perspective we have, but you could have another perspective. You could see a tree and see the tree as just an income for possible money income, yeah? And it's how we change our mind, and that's what I'm doing in my meditation. I try to see my environment from a different perspective, as part of myself, so to say, and not as something out there on far away, but to bring it into my heart. And so while doing this practice, we are stepping further into the direction of actually granting protection. So then we will save the forest, and we will save the life that is in the forest. And we are preserving grassland here actively at the Abbey. And so we also do our best to reduce our carbon imprints. So as I said, prayers alone are not sufficient. We need to be progressive, to be active and think what is the best action to do. And many say it's a good start to inform yourself, to get some knowledge about that area. There's one scientist who was saying, then if we do all that, his name is Baron Washington, and he's one of the first pioneers who already said 50 years ago that these climate feedback loops are going on. He said, we can reverse the feedback loops by slowing down, stopping deforestation, and so begin to cool the planet. And the solution is to make our way away from fossil fuels into a green earth. And then as a Buddhist practitioner, then we have the trees that are providing us shade for meditating, for example, or debating and discussing the Dharma under the trees. And at some point to attain, hopefully, awakening like the Buddha under a tree and die under a tree, be one with Mother Earth, and reawaken again to help all the other sentient beings to become awakened as well. Thank you.
The website that, feedback loops, climate.com, these videos were made by somebody who was one of our supporters and who contributed to the building of this building, and who we hope will contribute to the building of the Buddha Hall. They're really excellent, so I recommend them. I think as a community, we all have some awareness about the climate and want to stop climate change. I think we should keep with that, and really make it a priority to make appointments when you have to go to the doctor, the dentist, with 2 people at least in the car. Yeah. Another thing is some people order things for us and it gets delivered. That we can't control. But we order a lot of things ourselves. And we're out in the middle of nowhere. UPS spends a lot of gas coming out here. And many of these things could easily be purchased in town. Yeah. So it's a little bit more effort to put it on a list and, wait a few days until somebody goes to town. But it will really decrease a lot our carbon imprint, with all the trucks coming. Oh, one more thing. I just sent you another URL for an article that my nephew sent me. The U.S. military, their contribution to climate, to pollution change and fossil fuel carbon imprint is greater than many countries. It's one of the major polluters, the military, our military.